Yeah, my name is Clemens Puß. I'm working in the waste management industry since 1994, and I'm responsible within PreZero Germany for developing services for EPR systems in the area of collection, sorting, and recycling for now about 20 years. And I would like to share my experiences and some recommendations about these three operational aspects for developing an EPR system. I would like to start with collection services, and the most probably obvious question at the beginning is whether you really need something like a separate collection for different types of packaging material, like for instance glass, paper, or plastic and other types like metal or aluminum packaging. Since with regard to the collection services, it's probably easier to develop something like a joint collection service with a commingled approach where you mix everything in one container and then try to sort it afterwards. For the collection itself, this might be a solution or a point, but looking at the subsequent steps of sorting and recycling, it's very obvious that there's no alternative to making a separate collection. Just to give you a few examples, if you, for instance, make a joint collection of anything together with glass, the subsequent sorting plant will have major problems due to the very abrasive nature of glass, and subsequent recycler would have problems with little tiny residues from glass in any type of other recycling material. So glass has to be out, and even something like paper. Even though it may behave a little bit like, for instance, film in a sorting plant, is an issue when it's wet, for instance, and sticks to other types of plastics. A subsequent recycler will have serious quality issues with his, for instance, plastic material, and the sorter won't be able to separate something like a wet piece of paper from a plastic. So you definitively want to make a separate collection with regards to the next steps. The second question, of course, is what type of system to install. There are different systems available, like, for instance, collecting waste right at the household, called this curbside collection, or to let people bring their packaging material to either bring stations in a street or places a little bit further away. And besides, of course, the location and the situational aspects to be considered for this, there are two other major things to consider. These are quantity and quality. To give you an example, when we started the collection service in Germany in 1993, many households at the same time got bags to collect their waste. And by February 1993, almost the whole system, waste management system in Germany was totally overwhelmed because there was too much waste coming into the system at a very short period of time, and nobody was prepared for this volume. And the system almost collapsed. And a good recommendation would be to start with either roll out in a certain area of a town, or with, for instance, putting containers in the street for people to bring their material there, and then roll out the number of containers over time to keep control over the quantity so that your systems are not going to be overwhelmed. Same with quality. If you have bin collection systems, it's tricky to control the material which is in a bin when the bin is collected. This will be easier with bag systems, for instance, like in Germany with the yellow bag, or in Belgium with the blue bag. And you may consider, with regards to quality aspects, that a bag collection system in certain areas may be something you want to implement. The question of what kind of truck systems, etc., to be developed is something which is then, of course, dependent upon the collection system you're going to decide before. Only, of course, should be considered that ordering trucks on a large scale takes a while for the construction companies, and there has to be a little rollout time before to do this. Next question would be a point where you want to start. Do you want to start in cities or in rural areas, or where you want to start? There's no real one one-sided answer to this. That's something, of course, which you have to take a look at your situation. You may, of course, want to start in an area where you can control quality and quantity better. Another approach, for instance, which was taken in Jordan, was that before a rollout in a certain part of a city was started, they started with a rollout system in a school, where they had containers in a school. So when in the city the system was installed, there was somebody in the households to explain everybody what to do and how to separate the waste. And this there, of course, helps long-term to keep up the quality. A last final point, maybe a minor point, but from a long-term perspective, it's interesting to know when, for instance, is the high season of certain volumes. For instance, in Germany, or in the Netherlands and other countries, January is always the month with the highest volume, be it in glass or in other types of packaging. And to that extent, it's questionable, for instance, whether you want to change your contractors right at the beginning of January, when there is a high season, high volume. You have new companies with new people to learn the processes and maybe inclining weather conditions. It may be easier to avoid public discussions that you start your services maybe in a time of a year when the weather is better and the volume is not that high.